I have been working on Zedcab for a few weeks now, transforming it from the 24-hour prototype it started as to a fully fledged game ready to release. And initially, I wanted the next devlog to just be that release. But as it's going to take a little while longer, I thought I'd update you all on the state of the game. I've been focusing on 3 key parts of the game, being the map, the guns, and the quests, as these are the biggest undertakings and will make up the majority of the gameplay. Everything else is just fluff or polish. So let's start with the map. As I covered in the last video, I designed the map from my hometown, converting it into a grid-based simplified version, and I've continued that strategy with the building design. Fun fact here, towns actually have buildings in them, they aren't purely made up of roads, so I had to create a few. Most of the buildings in the game will be based off of the same designs, maybe some variants that are a different colour, or have a different garden just to break up the repetitive patterns and make it a bit more real, but for the most part they will be very simple. It's the unique buildings scattered throughout the town that will add a lot of detail. These will be where I'll focus most of my artistic prowess, with things like the supermarkets around the town or the golf course that wraps around the north side, requiring a bit more detail than random blocks of flats. Most of these aren't currently in the game, but I've put some very obvious out of place square buildings in their locations to show where they will eventually go. I'll get these more detailed buildings done for the next update, but for now, you're stuck with these thick ones. One element that adds a lot of detail to the buildings are the shadows. Here you can see the same sprite side by side, only one has some shading over it, and obviously it looks better. So I had to decide on the best way to implement these shadows. And the way I see it, there's 3 approaches I can take. The first approach would be to use Unity's 2D lighting effects and have full control over the light's colour, intensity, angle, basically everything to do with lighting. But this would mean that the sprites for the buildings would have to be separated, and I would have to draw normal maps for each sprite, so that the light casts shadows on the chimney or garden walls, for example. This would work, but would take quite a bit of setup, and as the game's art is all pixel art, I'd have to adjust the lighting to match this, instead of it being smooth like it is by default. The second option is pretty clever, I think. By drawing a mask outlining each shadow area on all 4 sides of the object, and by using a 2D vector to determine which sides to shade, I could create a shader graph that takes these values and overlays the shadow on the correct sides. So if you look at this little demo, the 4 sides are color coded. So left is black, up is green, right is yellow, and down is red. From this, at each corner, you can analyze the sides with red in them and green in them. So if you're coming from the top left, you're looking for the sides with red in them, which is these 2. And so, the inverse is also true. From the bottom right corner, you want colors without red, that's these 2. From this, you can see how to select the sides, and then it's just a case of applying a mask with a translucent black color to mimic a shadow. This is basically how a normal map works, but would instead be using a pixelated mask. This is doable and would be quite impressive to pull off. However, it does mean drawing masks for every sprite again, and I am just too lazy and too confused by my own planning to get this in the game. So I have gone for the third option, which is probably the smartest one to go for. All I've done is draw the shadows in the sprite, nice and simple. It means that I have full control over them. However, if 2 sprites are next to each other, the shadows interaction is a bit wonky. So these 2 houses are next to each other. You can see the shadow either hides behind everything or is covering the rooftop, which makes no sense. How do we fix this problem then? Well, just don't put anything next to the buildings. This art stuff is easy. So once that was all sorted, I placed the buildings all around the map. There's currently only a couple of variants for the houses, but I will work on making different styles and different gardens to make it look a bit more natural, but this is great for testing the gameplay with the obstacles in the way. I still need to make improvements to the zombie spawner. I think instead of the random radius around the car, I'm going to make it more zonal, so that zombies don't just pile up on the far side of the buildings. But that sounds like a lot of work, so that's coming later. So in the game, there's going to be a lot of weapons, but I only have the design done for one of them, which is less than a lot. And coincidentally, my friend Jake, who I've made a few things with before, hit me up and wanted to get into game development in some capacity. And I won't say no to free labour, and as he's pretty talented at the whole art and music side of things, I graciously let him design some of the weaponry. Like I said before, I didn't want this game to just have a collection of guns, because then they're not really exciting. Just because one gun shoots 0.1 seconds faster, or can fire up to 10 meters further, doesn't really make it that interesting. And instead, I wanted a unique arsenal to bring the zombies down. Now the first weapon he added was the flamethrower. This is early test gameplay, the visuals are definitely not finalized, but they get the point across. I started by setting up animation controllers and prefabs for these, but the one issue that I was facing at this point was the fact that the weapon controller just fires out a single raycast to deal damage, and as the flames affect zombies in an area, it doesn't really make sense to use raycasts, and instead I'd want to use projectiles. So the first task I had to implement new weapons was to implement a new weapon system, and I tackled this in quite a convenient way, and basically the same way I tackle every problem. I created a base class called Attack, which just defines some basic functions that will be replaced with the child classes. Currently, there's raycast and projectile attacks, but I may do something else later too, which will be easy to add with this setup. In the weapon controller code, I added a new line to call the attack script's function, removed the bit about firing rays, and added that to the raycast attack class. In the projectile attack, it uses a similar function, but instead instantiates a new game object from a prefab. This is very simple, standard code, but already it was working. I made a projectile class just to basically tell the projectile if it should be moving forward, to kill zombies on collision, and what to do when it ends. So now, if I go around firing the flamer, it creates this static projectile that follows along with the flamethrower's barrel. It's not perfect, but it functions, and that's good for now. The next design was a pretty cool one, the disc launcher. This is basically a fixed launcher on top of the car that fires spinning circular saw blades at the zombies. Part of the design that Jake wanted was that the disc launcher, along with some of the future weaponry, won't be able to rotate freely with the right analog stick, and instead is a fixed weapon that fires in the direction that the car is driving. And luckily for me, this was a simple addition to the weapons. I added a new boolean to the weapon scriptable object class that says if it is fixed, and if so, in the weapon controller where it rotates, it simply sets the rotation to the car's rotation, ignoring the player's input entirely. And with all that done, you can see the disc launcher in action here. It currently moves in a perfectly straight line, but I would like to add some variance and curve to it later. This is just the spaghetti code first implementation and not a final product. Maybe. We'll see. The third and final weapon I'm going to be showing off to you today is my favourite design out of the ones Jake has delivered so far, the Ancient Tome. An unexplainable mystical book filled with secret powers, and as a little taster for what it can do, here is one of the book's abilities, the Shockwave, destroying all of the zombies in its path. I still need to balance the size of the Shockwave. Too big and it's a bit OP, too small and you might as well just run over the zombies. And like I said, this is just one of the abilities that the tome is capable of, but you just have to discover the rest for yourselves. So we've got weapons coming along, there's a map developing, and lastly it's time to implement the quests into the game. I planned out the basic structure of how I wanted these quests to go, and got to work building them up step by step. How quests work in the game is there is a quest log that the player has that stores a list of available and completed quests. The quest class has a list of steps that it iterates through during the progression. Each step has an event that is called at the beginning of the step, where an item may spawn in a world, a specific zombie that needs to be killed appears, a passenger turns up at a location, whatever the details are for the step. And then there is an event at the end of the step, which will, for example, despawn an NPC that doesn't need to be there anymore, or remove some barriers that were placed. Again, this will all be specific to the individual quests, but you get the idea. And once a step is completed, the quest moves on to the next step and does the same. Once a quest is completed, the player is rewarded with a certain amount of zombie kills, or a new weapon may be unlocked at the garages. This is something I'll nail down when I design the quests, but they'll all be based off of this generic event. There's currently no visual indicator for the quest log in game, that's only in the inspector, but that is something I will design for the next time. So the quests are there, but how do you obtain them? Each quest is handed to you by an NPC, and all you have to do is park next to them and interact with them. When near an NPC, I want to have the zombies clear off so you can talk, and I've got that feature planned when I rewrite the zombie spawner class, but currently the zombies are interested in the new faces. An NPC will spawn after a certain criteria is met, for example hitting a zombie milestone, equipping a certain weapon, or completing a prior quest in the chain. This whole system may seem a bit complex or confusing to make, but by breaking it up in the planning stages to its simplest form, it was actually pretty easy, and adding new quests to the game at any time is rather simple. All I have to do is create a new scriptable object for the quest, fill in all the details, and place it in the quest manager's list, and that's it. And that is the current state of Zedcab. It's taking a little bit longer than I'd like, but that's just because I always have these times where I just crash in productivity and have to just wait until my brain kicks into gear again, but I'm very happy with it. Last video I said there may be something playable at this stage, and you know what, I'll keep that promise. So with a quick switch to the web platform, a brief setback while I beat up a few bugs that always appear when I try to build a game, and an update to my itch page, the game is now playable online. So check the link in the description for that. Let me know if you encounter any weird bugs or anything like that so I can investigate it. The content is rather limited, and like I said before, there's plenty of placeholder assets in here, but hopefully you enjoy the direction the game's going in. And that is all for now. Play Zedcab right now. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you are new. Let me know what you want to see added next, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.